Hey there everybody, this is Killin' Cat, but you can call me Patrick. Trust me, it's okay. Everyone does. Anyone else here remember this title? Whether from my recent 5 total playthroughs or from your own childhood. I played easily well over 100, maybe even 200 or 300 hours of this as a kid. I think I'm the only person in the world who maxed out mostly everything in this game many years ago now. I would be so happy to hear that people went beyond the 100% criteria in this game. In fact, tell me about it if you find anything I haven't, because after 15 years of playing this game, when coming back to it for the recent long plays of it, I found brand new content I had never seen before. And now for the title. Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles: My Life as a King. This game launched in 2008. I picked it up the year after, which was 2009 for anyone who can't count. Not to be confused with the after years, but there's a few references to that in here because the sequel to Final Fantasy IV was pretty recent, and I think it was... Yes, thank you, Google. It was the very same year, but significantly earlier. So this game isn't your typical Final Fantasy title. Instead of playing the adventurer out on adventures, you play as the king of the town that hires the adventurers that save the world. And without any question whatsoever, I was immediately charmed by this game. I thought I was alone in that for ages, but no, I'm not, and I'm extremely surprised by that. This is a nearly forgotten gem with almost no gameplay footage online, and it was extremely well reviewed and even sold well. The general user reviews often place this game as a 9 out of 10, and it's still ranked as one of the best Final Fantasy spin-offs by a few media outlets. I have so many feelings on that. It really hits me on a personal level because no one remembers this. How and why have we gotten to a point where so few people know about this game, and why are there only a handful of playthroughs online that don't even explore all of the game's content on offer? Why is this game stuck on Wiiware, a service that's now non-functional? Well, I do have an answer for that one. Square Enix didn't port it, that's it, and it's a shame. There's a speedrun.com page for this game with 4 total speedruns in the last 10 years. I think it's over 10 years. I could actually compete for a world record here, and I almost had it, but I messed up too many times near the end, and then I had to go take care of my son because he woke up from his nap, and that's honestly more important. Speaking of, this game came out when I didn't have a son. That's 16 years ago now. Oh, I feel old. That's almost the majority of what I wanted to say for this review, and it's fully lamentations that this amazing and simple budget title is being lost to time. If you don't want any spoilers, just play this game now. In any way you can. I genuinely mean that. This mouthful of a title game is so graphically astounding for the Wii that it has built-in slowdown. That's not a joke. Sometimes there's just too much happening on screen and the game is too pretty, so the game just naturally dips from its native 30 FPS to 23 FPS. And it even has sound compensation built in for this that for the most part works extremely well unless you summon Chime and then everything starts sounding like this. Also, I do recommend playing this on Dolphin. You should get a copy physically in any way that you can. I mean, it was only available digitally, but like an SD card. Because in Dolphin, you can remove the game's inbuilt fog. Thank me later, it looks so much better without it. Also enable VBI skip in the Dolphin emulator so the inbuilt slowdown does not bring you emotional pain. Okay, but now I'm rambling, and it's in an incredibly unfocused way, so I should fix that. This is not a story-driven title, except it also is. I feel like this is gonna get endlessly complex if I try and explain everything, but the main story is simple. You can summarize it in one sentence. You've refound your father's lost kingdom and you must rebuild, and you also must defeat the Dark Lord. Accompanying you are 2 heralds and powerful assistants, Chime and Hugh Yerg. I think I just said his name right, but I'm never sure, no one ever says it out loud. Chime is your half-sister and she's half Selkie, and she's probably the greatest accountant in the world, and probably the best warrior on the continent, and traveling companion of your father, former King Epitaph, is Hugh Yerg. The default name for this kingdom is Patarak, and the default name of your main character is Leo. And those are also the canon names, because the Crystal Chronicles spin-off series has a continuity that matters. Each game is a successor to the last and serves to expand upon the existing world, even if it doesn't always tell you that. There are a lot of things in here that might be lost on you if you don't play other Crystal Chronicles games, but you don't need to. For example, the miasma clearing in this game is directly your fault in the first game, and the DS game has some story tie-ins as well. Everything in this series matters to some extent, and that is something you should care about. As I said though, you don't fundamentally need it to play this one. This game does a pretty cool thing where playing other titles simply enhances your experience rather than it being an absolute requirement. I'm looking at you, Kingdom Hearts. Seriously though, every single one of the Crystal Chronicles titles is worth it. All of them are pretty awesome. All of them are distinctly their own games, and I will be covering them in the future. This series does have good stories, but they're not massive character-driven epics. They're mostly world building. There's a few exceptions in this series to my knowledge of that, and this tries to be one of them. Actually, it would probably be wrong to say a few exceptions when 2 out of 3 of the total games in the series are that way, that being character driven, though the way they do it is also world building. It's so well done. But my interpretation of the series when I was a child was that the entire game series was about world building, pretty much, and almost none of it was character driven because for some reason I didn't appreciate good writing yet. This title, though, it tells a pretty good story of 3 wanderers finding their homeland again, and the main character of the story is actually Chime, maybe? At least, maybe? I don't know. You clearly play as Leo, the Little King, but almost all the narration is done by Chime or the weird elementite crystal that bestows the magic of Architect? I don't actually know how to pronounce it. The last one seems least likely. That power is bestowed upon Leo, though. And then there's once where narration is done inside Leo's head, and it's the only time we ever get insight into his individual thoughts. Wiiware serves as your guard and valued older warrior who is apparently very attractive but afraid to take off his armor and thinks of himself as ugly due to a massive battle scar on his face that we never get to see. When you finally build a tavern where Chime really likes to hang out, you see notable concern for Leo and her character. When you finally build a training hall for Wiiware, you get this cute scene where he's just so excited to finally be able to help beyond being on guard duty at the castle. Also, you have this little penguin guy named Pavlov that follows you, but I don't actually ever interact with him much. He has very few lines in the whole game, and I think he's just there to serve a utilitarian purpose. Pavlov complains about everything you do, constantly, and you have to really prove yourself to him. Also, he has this cool mini game when you first meet him where he spooks you and you chase him through town. Every time you press the A button on him with a little song note above him, I don't remember exactly what one that is, feel free to tell me in the comments, and you get 10 elementite for doing that. The max I've ever gotten is 15 button presses, so see if you can beat my score and tell me how high you got in the comments. Genuinely though, even though Pavlov is kind of there for utilitarian purpose, you can talk to him at any time in the game after day 3, and I love these character interactions. I absolutely love the characters in this game, and we all have to remember that, once more, this was a budget Wiiware title. Because of that, sometimes it's a bit stilted, and you have to make your own conclusions on things in the story, and there's enough to tell you where to go mentally for these things, but it might not be there for everyone. I digress, let me talk more about the actual game here. How does the city builder do that world building bit that the rest of the series has that I love so much? Well, on the surface, it barely does. In the rest of the series, you're pretty globetrotting. You go everywhere and anywhere, usually within a continent or sometimes across continents. This game does it incredibly differently though. It's not as good as the first game, and it's not as character interaction based as Crystal Bearers, and it still manages to do it differently than the direct sequel to this game, My Life as a Dark Lord. If you take everything at face value, you'll lose sight of the fact that where you live has a story. Think about where you're sitting right now, all the good times that you've had sitting here, or maybe all the bad times that you've had. Maybe you just remember a time where your mother brought you toast on the couch. If you're laying in bed and you're about to go to sleep, you might be remembering something wonderful and miraculous that happened to you. Where you live, your home, your homeland, where you're from, and where you are right now have their own individual stories, and this game takes really good advantage of that. Not just you rebuilding your city to its former glory, but even your citizens. Where you place buildings alters their daily commutes, and it makes them happier if they don't have to walk far to get to the bakery. Their dialogues change with story progression and how happy they are. Take time to talk to them, get to know them, and raise their morale and happiness. Make sure to enter their home and check their family bios. Because yes, everyone has their own individual life and bio and patterns. Every single one of them. even possible citizens that you might never see. And yes, these people will be consistent across multiple playthroughs, so you don't have to get sad about losing anyone. Explore your little kingdom as well. Check out every nook and cranny. There's loads of smaller environmental storytelling examples, and if you miss anything, your citizens might very well point it out to you. Because guess what? They also eventually pick up on things by living there long enough, and that's kind of neat. In fact, there's multiple points in time where I did just that, and I felt really dumb after because the NPC told me. The game makes sure you know this is the case because several times NPCs will let you know about current events and how they feel about them with a little red exclamation point above their heads. That's not just to tell you what to do, no, that's optional. That's there to tell you that your citizens have input on what to do. And usually they're right. Not all the time, but usually. Sometimes they say some really ridiculous things. There's one little detail that still gets me in how obscure and weird it is, since it seems to lead to nothing. Sometimes citizens will comment on it, but the dialogue is very rare. And this little corner of town just kind of exists. You can't build in it, no one ever visits it, but it has a tiny little detail of frog feet engraved into the wall in gold or bronze. They lead down, around, and out another wall. Frogs are an important part of symbolism in this game that I'll talk about a little bit later, but there is no answer to what this is for. There's one theory online that it was likely for DLC, but I think personally that it has some sort of in-depth prerequisite for an event or NPC interaction no one has yet to find. Because as I said, I've been playing this game for 15 years and I'm still finding new things. However, if it's not that, I guess it's just a nice little detail and a shameful, wistful wish of what might have been more DLC. Before I get into DLC though, I need to talk about the main gameplay, and that's just running around and pressing Y to build a house. Maybe you run up to a building and press that same activation button to enter a bakery. Maybe you enter a shop or a kind of training hall. After entering these buildings, you can ask how people are, nose into their personal lives, and see if the business that you put in a spot is doing well. I recommend if you ask that last one, doing it later in the day gives better results, but you need elementite to build in general, and the game starts you with 300 elementite and tells you to build 3 small houses, which is the smallest and weakest that you can get. A good starting point, and it lets you hire up to 3 adventurers. Overall, the game does well enough to let you know how these resources work very quickly, so if you boot this up, I think you'll understand it almost instantly. The tutorial in this game is insanely good. But then before you get to wander the town, in the mornings you assign your adventurers to work on various day life tasks. Wait, no, that's a bad game. I shouldn't reference that in this. That game is terrible. But you do that. You manage every adventurer, their status and well-being, their stats, classes, what they buy, even their families and placements of their homes, and you can destroy 2 to 3 households a day and make your citizens homeless. Actually, they live in the castle until you build another home or business for them, because Leo is just that nice, and that will tie into another thing later. Sometimes you're going to be sending adventurers around town to do things for you, but most of the time you're going to be sending them outside of town to caves, crypts, castles, swamps, everywhere on this map here. And then when you get the daily reports from them, you get to see their stats and battle stats afterwards. Meaning if any battle for them went particularly wrong, you can actually course correct that and make it better for them next time, and hope they have the motivation to keep going that next day, because sometimes they just get really tired and they go to bed. If they accomplished a major goal, you give them a medal, which increases their stats. Most of the time, 2 adventurers are going to lead the pack on the rest with some absurd stats. My best adventurer was Havez, the close second was Malvina, and Havez had a strength stat of over 500, which means that everything that isn't a boss dies in maybe 1 hit, and a boss will die in a few. This balancing method is optional. I call it unfair for you and not for me, suck it, Dark Lord. And since I forgot to put it in my script, you can also check what the adventurers do in town, not just in battle, so you can judge how they're spending their money and get them to do better with it. This might seem like it gets to be a lot, but you can only have up to 16 adventurers, and like I said, you're probably going to have 1 or 2 that are insanely good, and the rest are the support characters. But that's only if you play the game as much as I do, because I have a problem. You can check how much they get paid at the end of the day, and when they get paid as well, and if they even manage to accomplish the daily behests that you set out for them. Behests for your adventures are as simple as exploring and as complex as hunting down long-lost alchemical ingredients, and then killing forgotten gods. all in a day's work. Here's a medal and 50 gil. Get back out there, champ. Speaking of gil, that is your currency in this game, as it is in pretty much every Final Fantasy title. I don't know why I felt the need to clarify, but if you're not familiar, you earn 10 gil a day based on working adults in your town. And there are 1 per household for small houses, 3 for spacious houses, 2 for large houses, 7 for luxurious houses, 3 for ukes, selkies, and lilties. To top that off, you can only build a finite number of the uke, selkie, lilty, and luxurious houses, numbering all 5 and then 3 respectively. The spacious house and luxurious houses take up 2 and 4 spaces, and that math gets a lot easier. Sure, the luxurious houses are so cool to look at, but they're very suboptimal. Since every building plot operates with a little square-based building system, you can guess where the math for this is. Yeah, sadly you can't build anywhere and everywhere, but I think that would have really stressed this game's engine and even the Wii, because the Wii gets really hot when you play this game. But you can figure out what your big moneymakers are there without any complex math. It's the large houses. But you only get large houses when playing the game on hard mode, which is actually not that hard, and you only get hard mode after beating normal mode. Large houses give you 20 gil a day and they take up 1 spot. If you fill 4 spots, that's more than luxurious houses give you, which is 70 gil total a day. Small houses give you 10 gil a day, uke houses give you 30 gil, same applies for selkie and lilty. And the good news is, everything you unlock in this list right now, except for the large house, stays unlocked the next time you beat the game, since you need to beat big bosses to be able to unlock them, or complete side quests to be able to do it. I think the developers thought that would be a good idea to let you keep these. And really, I don't disagree, that's a great idea. In order to unlock the luxurious house, you need to beat a super boss, and thankfully, in every game following that, you do get to keep it. I know I'm over-explaining that again, but for some reason, when I was playing this natively on the Wii, I could never beat that super boss again, and I don't know why. Now for shops, for weapon, armor, and item shops, those are the only ones you get in the game, really, the direct shops, and not like training buildings. After you beat the game once, assuming you unlocked all of them, you get to take one with you of each and just build them at the start of the game if you want. That streamlines the process of starting up your next playthrough extremely, and it's so nice. Normally you have to play the game for about an hour before you unlock these, but if you don't feel like doing that, you can just push right through. You don't even have to waste time. Now let's break down the races in this game by order of favoritism. The uke, selkie, and lilty all have default jobs based on their race. I know that sucks, doesn't it? Uke are a kind of agender metal suit with some mild organic bits, so when I say their women are white mages and their men are black mages, it's more like a suggestion of magical inclination rather than distinctly being a gender difference. Yes, their gender is black mage and white mage respectively. However, selkie are always thieves, and in this game they're always women, and lilty are always warriors. Clavat, the starting and primary race of Patarak, are essentially humans and can be anything. They don't have anything that they're explicitly good at. And as we all know, the uke are the best race introduced in this series, and they need to be in more titles. Always more ukes needed. This actually directly connects with class training buildings, and those are the White Mage Academy, Black Mage Academy, Gaming Hall, and Training Hall. I hope they're all self-explanatory for what classes they correlate to. You create a behest for adventurers who want to be a certain class and then decide whether or not they get to be that class. You can't make every dream come true though, as it might destabilize your kingdom as a whole. There's also more of these in DLC, including a library which adds racial bonuses to your adventurers that they have to buy. Okay, that's a weird flex, but it works, I guess. Placing the houses of your adventurers and citizens near these specific training halls actually causes a correlating stat increase, which was a really hard sentence to say for some reason. That took like 4 takes, and that's my best one. Put someone near the training hall, they get better strength and toughness, and maybe a little bit better vitality, which is one of the hardest stats to increase. Put someone near the Black Mage or White Mage Academy, and they get intelligence and willpower bonuses. And put someone near a gaming hall, and they get dexterity and agility bonuses. I think the library gives an in general bonus. But the game will never tell you that. I mean it, the game will never tell you that. It'll tell you that about every other building, but the library, they will not tell you. On to better news, though. Each building has skills you fund research for, or sometimes equipment for in the case of Hugh Yerk's training hall, to level up with your daily tithes. It is insanely worth it and makes beating the game a lot more varying and fun. You can level up anything, even weapons, armor, and items by 5 levels if you pay for it yourself, but the adventurers can actually buy these items between those levels, so you level up something to level 10 and they can buy a level 7 version of that item. Usually they do tend to do that. I don't really know what tells them to buy things, so I do my best to force them by giving them medals that tell them they can only buy from certain stores. The lowest cost upgrade is, to my memory, 80 gil. The highest cost is, to my memory, 700 gil. And once more, I have to say again, from my memory, please don't get mad at me in the comments. Guild halls are another upgrade building I recommend always having, especially after you get your library, since it adds bonuses to your purchasable skills. The guild hall raises your adventurer cap and gives out pay raises. I recommend rapidly maxing both of these out so none of your adventurers lag behind or lose morale. Since them being paid for risking their lives is, well, it's very important because they could actually die on duty. I mean, in world they could, but they don't actually do that in gameplay, thankfully. Each behest for adventures also costs a certain amount of gil, scaled for distance from town. In-town behests cost 10 gil, and you can get as high as 100 gil per behest, depending on where you're sending people. Don't worry though, Chime will tell you where things go and how much they cost. I talked a bit about difficulty there earlier, so let me do some more here. Difficulty scaling in this game rocks. Normal mode is the baseline gain for everything in dungeons, and dungeons you send adventurers to are usually scaled for their level. Hard mode shakes things up a bit. Most dungeon level requirements are doubled, and the ones that aren't are raised an almost arbitrary but not painfully so amount, and rewards from them are less. And then very hard mode is kind of a task. I never felt like I had enough resources until near the end of the game, and then it was only just enough until right before the final boss. By the end, I was making 900 plus gil a day. Yeah, maxing out everything in this game takes a lot of time. Very hard mode is also the only difficulty that lowers the amount of buildings you can destroy in a day, but only by 1, maybe. I'm not sure of this one. Normally, like I said before, I think, you can destroy 3, but in very hard mode, it's 2. No big deal really, a minor inconvenience at worst, and I don't know why that's a thing. Also, since I didn't talk about it before, because it very rarely comes up until near the end game if you don't have enough building slots filled, you have a limit on the amount of buildings that you can place a day, and that's before the magic you use starts to cause a strain on your body because you're not actually prepared for it. Remember, it was just suddenly lumped on you. You've done no training for magic. Once more, a minor inconvenience that doesn't really hurt anything except consume a little time near the end of the game. If you complete 1 or 2 runs of normal mode, you can easily do hard, and then the same applies for hard mode if you want to do very hard, which is the final difficulty level I've been able to find at this time. I would say Google or Wikipedia are reliable sources for this, but most of the time, you won't find a thing on this game. GameFAQs is pretty good at times, but it doesn't cover everything, and I wish it did. The point is, for all we know, there is a harder difficulty with some incredible unlock requirements. Though at this point, after 15 years, I kinda doubt that a little bit. It's worth noting that every time you beat a cycle of this game, which I don't recall if I said or not, can be beaten in under 1 or 2 hours, you get a ranking card and a reward. I think the highest rank is SS, and I have never gotten 3 of those lined up. You see, you get ranked on city development, research is completed, meaning donating to all the big adventure buildings and otherwise, dungeons conquered, and progress in adventures, meaning how high leveled they are, how skilled they are, and things like that. It's so hard to get a perfect score on all 3 in one run, and I've only ever managed 2 out of 3 as SS's. Usually development and adventurer progress. It is quite the Herculean task to beat this game not only fast enough, but with enough money and items invested to be able to get this done. And by the way, yes, you have to have 16 adventurers to even try at getting SS in adventurers. To the uninitiated, this game will only have like 5 songs, and the truth is this game actually has around 10 songs in regular use. And it has 16 songs total. This means the OST uploads on YouTube don't actually have the complete OST since they only have 13 songs. There's also a special soundtrack I didn't hear my whole life until this very year. Well, I mean, except in cutscenes, where if you're nice enough to your citizens to be able to stay up late into the night, a kind and soft melody will play. This song is called Crystal Resonance, and it will only otherwise play during certain cutscenes. So unless you're really nice to your citizens and raise their morale a lot, you'll likely only get to hear this beautiful melody maybe 4 times in the whole game. I'm thinking less than that. But if you're a really good person, you get rewarded, and you can make this a daily event if you're nice enough to your people. You might think that's a bit daft as a design, and I somewhat agree, but your people are happier, which makes them kinder. They respect you since you walk among them and try and make their lives better. And the more people like you, the less likely you are to be shanked in the streets after dark. These after dark and nighttime segments are also astoundingly calm and beautiful. The crystal glows, you get little particle effects on the screen that sometimes change, and it being a new thing I found in a game I've been playing for 15 years that I had to work really hard for made me so happy. It nearly did bring tears to my eyes, and it's something you can just so easily miss. It felt like I had genuinely bonded with the citizenry well enough to be trusted by them. They spoke so kindly and so highly, and they gave me rewards. I solved their problems. I felt at peace. But to get to this point, you have to max out your city with morale spheres. You get 1 for each bakery, and then you have to talk to people enough to fill the morale gauge, and then you get a morale sphere. This sphere is a little yellow ball that is completely physical, apparently. I don't know how it works, but it can be used to physically and metaphorically upgrade your kingdom both at once. Your kingdom starts as a settlement, and it scales all the way up to being a promised land. And you do get bigger and better benefits with each rank. Dialogues change, and even some music changes here and there. Initially, for the first 2 upgrades, you only need 3 morale spheres, but for the 3rd and 4th, you need 4, and for the 5th, you need 5. After that, demolish 2 of your bakeries. They are completely unnecessary and don't actually raise morale and happiness enough. They just make dropping morale slower and only localize to a small area of nearby homes. Doing all of this, it will probably be in the last 2 hours of gameplay that you're able to explore at night. And when I explain it, it feels like a lot, but in gameplay, it's so natural to do. You'll have a constant positive feedback loop for doing it. It's so well made, I never noticed any time consumption until my video got to 11 hours long, and then I had to rush to the end because YouTube has a 12-hour limit on uploads. It's so wholesome. It's so weird, yeah, but it adds character, because once more, you're experiencing this world through the eyes of a little child king. You're not a big, strong adventurer. You're even a full head shorter than most of the people in your town that are adventurers, and sometimes 2 heads shorter than the adults. I remember at one point in this game doing a job for one of my citizens to find an unmentionable of his, and then to find a Uke grimoire. I thought this was weird, so I looked into his bio, and it says he hopes his wife doesn't kick him out again. Is he cheating on his wife with a Uke? How does that work? Ukes are essentially a soul with fuzzy hands and a suit of armor. I know love knows no boundaries, but I'm really curious how they're doing. And that's just another tiny little character detail you could completely overlook. Now, in every Final Fantasy game, there is some variation of boss fights, and those are here. Super bosses, I wanted to mention earlier, and I might have for luxurious houses, because you have to beat a super boss to get a luxurious house. Super bosses get a special health bar at the bottom of the screen, and so does the final boss. But beating bosses or declaring a national holiday will cause a morale frenzy. You only get national holiday declarations after your 2nd upgrade to your kingdom. Morale frenzies double or triple the morale you get from talking to your citizens and adventurers, and for a certain amount of time. But I'm gonna be honest when I say I didn't ever reach that time limit at any point in the game. Even when I could stay up through most of the night, not once. I manually ended it by using the raise morale feature, which uses a morale sphere and you run around and talk to people, and that's what makes them really happy. But I never once met the time limit naturally. There is something kind of small, minute, and interesting though. Most people won't realize is frog symbolism. See, in Japan, which I hope it goes without saying that the country that made this game was Japan, frog symbolism often means, or meant at least, I don't know if it still does, good fortune or fertility of the lands. So when you become the promised land of Patarak, holding high the symbol of the frog, you're telling everyone you are genuinely a promised land. It also means to return to or come back, and it's up in the air what to return can attach to. In all, I would say the whole bit is to come back home and to return it to good fortune. The game certainly lives up to that incredibly directly. And while it is a minor note that serves to expound further the rebuilding and return of yourself and all your citizens, it's really cool the team managed to put so much effort into something so simple and made it because your main character's mom really liked frogs. She thought they were real cool. There's also another counter to this. Your main character's father, who unintentionally brought the kingdom down, disliked frogs. He plastered them everywhere for the sake of his wife, and comments how much like her you are, and how people like her, kind and benevolent, are the future and what Padarak needs to succeed. It's a heavy-handed symbolism that doesn't tell you the direct meaning, but hey, you know, I guarantee some of the in-game music has some sort of symbolism too, but that knowledge of music past the middle school level is completely beyond me, unfortunately. I would love to see an analysis of this game one day in the musical spectrum. Now though, we're nearing the end of the review and I don't have much else to say. So at the end of the game, you must, absolutely must, enter every shop you built, and maybe every building you built, of mild to great importance. Chime has commentaries for you. They're just diary pages that she's reading aloud. I've seen a lot of people miss these. They're so very worth it. Everyone in town has things to say too. The music changes, and on my first playthrough, this was when I realized I missed out on all those small little things I've been talking so much about. And even though I realized that, I still didn't take it slow. I rushed to play the game. I rushed to beat it every time. And from there, I just kept doing that. It was only recently that I went back through. I realized I missed things. I felt like I missed things, and then I found more to do. I got the DLC at some point as a kid, all of it, and then I had even more to do, but I didn't think about it. I played hard mode, and I found out there was even more content, and then very hard mode had even more, and I still didn't think about it. This is one of those games that on the surface it doesn't have much going on, but it manages to feel infinite and evolve with your every action in even the most tiny ways, and it's so easy to overlook because you're just pressing A to skip through all the dialogue. People comment on the placement of buildings, even ones not their own. Adventurers' moods sway with your interactivity with them. Shops grow their inventory in relation to other buildings and even have special sales days based on the amount your adventurers spend. There's so much tiny little stuff I didn't see, I didn't take the time to do, and I wasn't kind enough to the citizens to really have that impact. After all of this, I don't have much more to say on my life as a king itself. This game entertained me for an incredible amount of time. It's insanely pretty, especially if you play it on Dolphin and go into the settings and remove the in-game fog, like I said before. The music is great, the story is just alright, honestly. The gameplay is simple but engaging enough for me to keep playing for 15 whole years. It manages to tell small stories of your citizens so insanely well, a larger story to middling success, and have some actually pretty deep but heavy-handed symbolism. And further than that, this game was very affordable. I was really poor as a kid, and this entertained me now for more than a decade. I still return to it almost every year. Is this the best game? No. No, it is absolutely not. But it's a title on a budget, and it knows it. It capitalizes on every small little thing that might be considered insignificant. And so many people have told me that none of it matters, but it matters to me, and that means it must matter to someone else out there. Now I'm kind of just sadly rambling into the void. In reality, like 30 people are probably going to watch this. And that's because this game is almost forgotten now. I've talked to a lot of people about it, but most have only heard of it tangentially. It did insanely well on reviews. It sold like hotcakes. I remember it getting 8s, 9s, and even 10s across the board. I talked with people about it back in the day, though. They just kind of were like, yeah, I played it, it's fun. And even back when I was a kid, close to when this title came out, I would hear people just casually talking about it because it was that popular if you owned a Wii. So why doesn't anyone remember it? And the answer is, it's a budget Wiiware title. Most people probably played this game once and then never again. Most people probably didn't buy the DLC, so after a month in the limelight, this title faded almost wholly out of the consciousness of those who enjoyed it, and thus it didn't spread far. This game even had a Flash game tie-in that is now completely gone. I can't find it anywhere, and there's only one GameFAQs thread and one thread in the world I found talking about it. This Flash game tie-in actually directly correlated with the main game, and it was you playing as one of the citizens of the game. You wanted to see the success and prosperity of your kingdom because your king is working so hard, and you wandered the streets, entered buildings, talked to people, and just spread good word. And that's a fundamental aspect to how this game works as well. But because the popularity of this game died off so fast, that one did too, and now no one remembers either. Even the website that hosted the news coverage for this Flash game doesn't host the page anymore. I can't find any other information about it. Now mind, I have no doubt this game continued to sell decently well as the years went on, but because of the lack of availability on other consoles, it didn't do well. Not as well as it could. It didn't become the long-standing cultural success. I guarantee you Sony fans would have loved to tear into this game. This game, it needs to be on modern consoles. It needs to be ported like Crystal Chronicles, the original, was. I would pay good money for a definitive edition of this game today. And if you didn't notice, I didn't once mention any gimmicks for the Wii, for this game specifically, and that's because it didn't use any. It could even be played with a GameCube controller. This game was accessible, it barely cost any money, and it was a digital only locked to the Wii. And very sadly, that last part is what's killed this title's long-term viability. So, as probably the last person in the world that cares about this game, I hope I at least somewhat inspired you to check it out, and the expectations you can have for it. And maybe you too will lament how fast this game disappeared from public consciousness. I hope someone more analytical than me and more knowledgeable than me on this title will come out with stat sheets, ideal city layouts, the works. I mean, I technically did a bunch of ideal city layouts in this series, so check those out. This game, it means so much to me. I did it on a budget, I played it for so long, it's a game I still come back to. It needs another chance, and I hope it gets it. I hope there's some sort of return to fame for this title, because it burned so brightly and then just went out. It sold so well the first time, and the only problem was that it was stuck on the Wii as a download-only Wiiware title. And for one last, deeper note, there's something very positive about this game that speaks to me personally. It's that it pushes you to be kind. You can for sure be neglectful, but you can't really be evil in this game. But if you be neglectful, everything is so much harder. You have to take the time out of your day to make sure the lady down the road gets her striped bandana back. The game not only reinforces this kindness in the gameplay loop, but also in dialogues, constantly telling you to be kind and to understand each individual you come in contact with. And really, I didn't realize that until this year. This might not be inherently a player choice, but it's a very interesting narrative choice. It doesn't show how you would act, it shows you how the character would act. By making it so you have to be that character. The reason you get to name Leo and the kingdom Patarak isn't to imprint on them what you desire, it's so that the game's fundamental kindness in design imprints on you. To make you understand the character you're playing in the city you're building. While they are fully a silent protagonist, they are kind, helpful, empathetic, and compassionate, and it helps you to understand how to be that way by showing that no matter what your position is in life, you can always do your best to make life better for others. You can be the king of a country, but even the smallest person in your kingdom matters, and that's because everyone matters. And the game shows you that by letting you see each detail of your people's lives within the limits allowed, unfortunately, by the engine. And it lets you cater to that and do everything you can to make their lives better. I love a lot of games like that, and I think a lot of us can learn from this and do our best to be like that as well ourselves. Because unlike Leo here or Chime, we're not main characters. We're just people. Everyone else also exists. There are yet still a few more things I want to say at the end of this, and this is being recorded a few days later, so there's a little bit of a tone shift in my voice, and I am no longer as sad. I was able to find a ton of resources for this game backed up on the Wayback Machine and archive.org, and that's really cool. All the resources I found that were important on the Wayback Machine will be easy to find. They're the only ones available, and they're only backed up on certain days. But I also have PDFs of all those pages downloaded just in case anything does go wrong and those go away in the future. You can find those PDFs on my Discord because that's where I store all of these things. And one day I'm gonna have to find a different place because Discord won't last forever. Also, I want to make a post to the Lost Media Wikipedia and their Discord and wherever else I can really get help to find this lost Flash game because it is really cool and I would love to be able to find it, and there's a chance that someone out there does have it. I just can't find them. And the fact is, everyone out there can play this game now. This game is backed up fully online, every version of it. And it's worth it. This game has been completely abandoned on Wii for the past 16 years now, and I don't mean like it was abandoned from the get-go. It had DLC, it got a sequel. I mean that there's been no effort to port this game anywhere else. I encourage fans who really like this to look into decompiling this game and seeing everything it has to offer and making an official PC port. This is a really cool game that, if it had the right support and the right modding community, could do so much. So take this video, share it around, spread the word, make sure everyone hears about it, and maybe we can find that Flash game, and maybe more people will pick up this game again, and it will get more ports, and more DLC, and more things coming to it, and maybe another sequel. Another sequel in the same vein as this game, and that would be so cool. I would love to see that one day. But until that day, thank you guys for watching. If you like my stuff, you know what to do. Like, comment, and subscribe. Check my Ko-fi and join my channel in the description below to support me, and joining my channel is the best way to do it because it also gives YouTube money, which makes YouTube stick around longer. And I would really absolutely love to hear from everyone who played this game. I mean it, genuinely everyone. Because this game is just so good, and there's so many things that you could tell me that I might not have mentioned in this, and I might not know, and that would mean a lot. Once more, thank you all for watching, and I hope tomorrow brings better tidings. Bye.